Hey, what's up everybody? Bdf 44 coming at you another video. Alright, so probably only gonna talk for about 15 minutes since I'm not too far away from the hotel, but yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on around this Donald Trump Epstein conversation. Footage starting to pop up from all different types of places, pictures, countless pictures of Donald Trump with young people, Donald Trump with Epstein. The quality of these pictures, I don't know. I have no idea, but it doesn't look good, man. It doesn't look good. And I just saw some footage from a lady who's claimed that Donald Trump took her virginity when she was 13 years old and essentially told her she needs to get an abortion if she gets pregnant, and she should be lucky he was the one who took her virginity and not some 14-year-old pimply kid. I don't know, man. And then you hear Donald essentially, saying, yo, this is, why are we still talking about this? Why are we still talking about that creep Epstein? Like, Epstein was one of your buddies, homie. You call him a creep now. He's in the grave. You call him a creep, and I guess you distanced yourself completely, and now all of a sudden the list doesn't exist, even though it was your people saying they had it. I don't know, man. This don't look good, Donald. It don't look good, buddy. It's going to be very difficult. See, that's the thing when you become president and you got stuff in your past like this. I'm surprised it didn't come up sooner, because he's already been president once. We didn't hear nearly as much about this stuff back then as we're hearing about it now. I think the timing of this is rather interesting to me. It's interesting to me. I don't know that Donald is innocent of anything. I think he probably, if you ask me, I think the odds are he probably did get involved in a lot of stuff he shouldn't have did in this regard. But the timing of it all, it's unique, to say the least. Why didn't I hear about this during his first term? Why didn't I hear as much about this when he was running for president this go round? Why am I hearing about this right now? And I would tell you, it's just interesting because Epstein killed himself, 3 years ago? So it's not like there's no new developments. I think the only thing that's really new as it pertains to this is maybe the footage that's come out about Epstein, about what happened the night he was killed. I think that's the only footage that's been recently released. Otherwise, all the information and everything that's being shown to us repeatedly, it's already been out there. So why is it such a big fuss today and not any of them other times before this? I'm curious about that. I'm curious about that because I don't trust any of these government officials. I don't trust any of these people. And I know they're forever at war with one another, Democrats and Republicans. You want to know what I think is possibly going on? I think the Democrats are making a move. That's what I think is happening here. I think they're trying to get him impeached so they can get back in office and do things their way. And while he's doing things that are no good for a lot of people, which would put a huge battery in the back of a lot of people who probably have some power. At the end of the day, we also know the Democrats ain't interested in doing anything good either. They're just as compromised by Israel as the Republicans are, and are more than capable of continuing us, America, on the path of being terrorists of the earth. Nothing has to change just because they're in office. And I'm learning things about what was going on while they were in office that I never knew about until now. The horrible things that they was doing. They didn't hurt their own people as much, as loud as the Republicans are capable or willing to do. What we're seeing, the stuff with ICE and all of that, the demonstrations against Americans isn't as traumatizing to Americans, but they're still awful when it comes to how they treat people outside of the country. It's still terrible in regards to keeping up this war machine, and hurting innocent people is something that they have no problem funding, as they've proven in this genocide to me. So I don't feel any more comfortable with the Democrats in office as I do with the Republicans in office. I really don't. And I don't doubt that both of them are willing to do horrible things to gain power and regain power so that they can enact their vision of what this country is supposed to be, neither of which has anything to do with God. Neither of which have anything to do with the Holy Spirit. So that's what I've come to know. So when I see Donald Trump having all his dirty laundry being exposed to us at a certain time on the clock, we look right now, yeah, I think that that's not by accident. I think that some of his enemies are making a move, and we'll see what happens from here. And that's my thinking about this situation. Regardless of what, man, prayers out to the victims of this situation, of the many child trafficking victims and sexual crime victims. They are the ones that get lost in all of this, in this power struggle, partisan power dynamic. Is that they're actual victims here that only get listened to when it looks at a certain time on the clock, when the calendar folds a certain way that fits those who are willing to make a do about something. You know what I mean? If the clock don't say the right number on it, they ain't being listened to, they ain't being considered, they're being hushed, they're being silenced, or what have you. That footage that they've done, these interviews they've done, don't get listened to when the clock don't strike a certain number. I'm not lost upon all of that. Selective interest in these situations, these things. And that's what we always want to pay attention to going forward. As I've been telling you guys for a long time, I've been seeing there was a time and a place for all the interests of all the things that they try to pour us into our intentions, into our what's the word, that they try to pour all their marketing dollars into, media dollars into. It's when we're not paying attention to these things that we need to become more independently aware that these things are taking place and show some interest to them. That's what I think. They had a whole era where Black Lives Matter was the only thing anybody was talking about. One side of the country loved it to no end. The other side of the country was offended by it, hated it, and hated everybody singing about it. Right now, it's a totally different thing. We're not even thinking about Black Lives Matter like that. The focus is pointed at a certain spot at a certain time. We need to broaden our thinking, broaden our focus as individuals, and start to wonder where we are not pointed at a given moment, rather than focusing in on what we are and whatever time they tell us is right for us to do so. What are we not thinking about right now while we are focused on this situation? Just makes you wonder, man. Everything's a distraction. Even the stuff we're supposed to be focused on is sending us down a certain path so that we're not focusing on everything else. They believe we're one-track minded, and that is exactly why I do my channel the way I've done it, as I've explained to you guys a million times. I'm willing to have these type of conversations on a channel where I'll talk about the Lakers and basketball and all of that for that exact reason, because I'm trying to normalize not being bottled into a box where we're one-track minded, where we look at the clock and figure out when we care about something and when we don't, when it affects people, innocent people who are awesome, who don't deserve to have their lives focused on when the status quo is conveniently pointed in that direction, but all the time. The people who need to be taught how to think openly, even in times when they're looking away from things because they want to have some pastime away from the struggles of their lives. We got to normalize strengthening ourselves, as I've said it recently, against being so coddling of our own minds that we forget to focus on those who need attention. When we call ourselves activists, we call ourselves humanitarians, we call ourselves decent people, people of God or whatever, people of moral standards, of stature and class, or whatever the heck you want to consider yourself in regards to being a good human being. We need to stop being so comforting and coddling of our own mental health, discarding of individuals who don't get a break from their terror. And the environment of them not having a break from their terror only comes from us being like this and pointing our head in different directions collectively with a certain interest for a time, only to look away to start that process over again in some other hour. Yeah, we got to evolve. And so that's what it is that I'm trying to do. That's why I do what I do. And I think it's the way forward. I think it's exactly how we need to condition ourselves. I am not too sensitive of a person to hear about something that may trigger me, that ultimately will do more good in regards to the conversation than harm to my own psyche. Despite what the media is trying to get me to think about myself and my fellow man. We are not in a space where we have to say extra words, distort words to live with our own trauma. We don't have to do that. To cope with our own trauma, we don't have to sweep things under the rug. You can say a certain word that they tell us we can't say. You can live with yourself if you hear those words. You know? Because the only reason why they don't want you to say those words is because they don't want you to paint the proper picture for how disturbing the thing is. Now, a lot of times they're upholding these things. And they want to tell you, no, we're doing it for you. We're shutting down these words for you. No, you're not. You're shutting them down so I can't properly describe what it is that I've seen. A trauma in my life, or trauma in someone else's life that needs to be painted properly. You don't want me to properly paint it. You know how important words are. You know how important words are. You know how powerful words are. You know the difference between the R word and the word grape, and how it subtly paints a picture that is more palatable and doesn't properly put the emphasis on it that needs it placed upon it. An emphasis that sends home the reality that this is something that has urgency needed for it from all of us in order for it to be put to an end. An urgency that they don't want us to psychologically trigger into ourselves. And that's what that's about. They could care less about your mind. They care less about you being triggered or someone sensitive enough to be triggered or whatever. They want to treat us all like we're the 1% of those who can not handle being triggered. They want us to turn our entire communications process off in a way to fit the very few who are too sensitive to be able to absorb certain words without losing their damn mind. I don't think that works. I don't think that works. Nor does it do anything for deterring what ultimately forced them into that space in the first place. Properly defining things and saying for it for what it is, and not allowing ourselves to be censored, or not allowing those who are in control of whether or not we're being censored to think that we're going to go along with that going forward in that regard. Especially when we're not even stopping with our conversations. We're just dumbing down the words that we use in conversation. I think it does more damage than it does good, in my opinion. Much more damage than it does good. You know, I was a child who was unsafe. I had some things that happened in my life that affected me throughout the course of my adult life, all the way up to the moment you're looking in this camera at me. Seriously. Things that would have been normal in my life if not for those traumas. Traumas that took place when I was younger than the kids in front of me at this elementary school. Things that I still remember to this day. And I'm 41 years old and all this. And even as that is the case, I can tell you that the words that describe my trauma should be described to properly paint out my trauma, to bring about the urgency necessary to drive home the point that what took place to me should never happen to anyone else again. that whatever happened to those who went through what it is I went through, or went through something similar, that the urgency for us to stop it and the connection between what I went through and you needs to be closer, so that you can, within your own space of life, have the urgency to be vigilant, to look out for these circumstances, to protect your children, to not be so trusting with your children around any damn body, really. And if you are a sick person like the people that did whatever they did to me and to others, you get some help. You get some help for yourself. I'd imagine you tell me, well, we can have those conversations without using certain words. I'll say, yeah, but if you dumb down those words, those conversations aren't really being had. You're talking around it, you're keeping the emphasis off of it, and you're allowing for it to be seen as softer of an event than what it actually was, as you paint it out to be something that is softer than what it was. It was because I have those memories that I'm so urgent about these conversations involving the safety of children. It is because I have memories, not because I heard somebody talk about it and they turned a word or two a different way so that it wasn't actually said but spoken around or what have you. It's because I can remember things that I have the urgency necessary to bring to you to say this. Properly painting out the urgency necessary, as well as the memories of how helpless I felt when going through what it is I went through. So when I hear about Donald Trump allegedly doing whatever to a child, or I hear about Epstein allegedly doing whatever to a child, I think about myself and how vulnerable I felt when I was unsafe in the presence of a monster, when I wasn't old enough to properly describe what it was that was happening. This is what I need you guys to understand. That's why I'm as fearless as I am, because I went through a little something in my life. Not as bad as these folks went through, but enough to where when I describe it to people, they feel bad. When I describe it to people, they look at me a little different, because they understand I went through something that they never went through. Hopefully never went through. And we all have a sad story to tell, but it's very difficult to tell that story if we're constantly using words that don't properly describe our experiences. I want people to think about that. And you think about who it is that controls these platforms and what it is that they're ultimately being revealed to have been about and what they do. And they tell me that they're interested in protecting you from your triggers when they tell me not to use words a certain way, or not to say the word that triggers you, or whatever they want me to think, how soft your mind may be. So that's what I want to say, man. Prayers out to everybody who's going through anything that is traumatic, especially those who have went through things that ultimately affected their psyche forever. I can relate, very much so, unfortunately enough. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, at whatever level of sensitivity we have, to use what we went through as a means of trying to help be a part of the world that prevents these things from happening to others. If we're not doing that, then what did we go through that for? That's what I'm wondering. Bdf 44, I thank you all for watching.